This is now Serious and Silliness Outcast channel. I got two more channels coming, and they're coming soon, so stick around. This next interview is from a young lady who is really, really talented. Once I heard her voice, I had to have this girl on. Her name is Josie Lavalle. She's only 20 years old, a college student in California, and wait till you hear this voice. And once you do, you're going to want more. So that's why I'm putting the YouTube channel and the Instagram in the description area in this YouTube video. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple iTunes or Google Podcast, her YouTube is Josie Lavalle, Josie Lavalle, and her Instagram is josiela.sings, josiela.sings, sings. And remember, like and subscribe to the brand new Serious and Silliness Outcast channel, and stick around because there's a lot more coming. All right, guys, enjoy this video.
Serious and silliness, like and subscribe.
That was fantastic. All right, so we got a really good show for you tonight, and this is very different but very meaningful. So I'm sitting at home and I'm watching a show called Cabinets of Curiosity on Netflix, and there's episode 3 called The Autopsy, and this song is playing in the background of one of the scenes. It's a great show, and the song is How High the Moon, but this version was by Pat Suzuki. And I'm like, I know that song. That's a beautiful song. And the song is also in a famous scene from a movie called Biloxi Blues with Matthew Broderick, which was a World War II movie done in the 80s. It was a play, and then it was made into a movie. With a great scene, he's dancing with this woman that he falls in love with. So for shits and giggles, what I normally do is I go, oh, I wonder who else would do something like this. So I put in the song How High the Moon cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I come across you, Josie Lavalle, doing a sort of rendition of this song. But your voice is amazing, but your voice is Elle Fitzgerald, it's Sinatra, it's Billie Holiday. And I just couldn't believe that this girl who is this young girl, how old are you?
20. All
right, so this girl, Josie Lavalle, is 20, and this retro, beautiful voice comes out. So without further ado, Josie Lavalle, songwriter, vocalist, musician, however you want to introduce yourself. I'm just happy to have you on. How you doing?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm a vocalist, musician, and songwriter, so all of those are correct. Okay. And I'm very excited to be here. I know that what I do is not typical, and it's not mainstream, but I enjoy it that way, and I think it's something that makes me a little more unique. And it's a hard thing to kind of do because of that history, and has such a high, it's on such a high pedestal. So you really want to make sure that you're respecting it every time you open your mouth to do something like that. And I'm glad that they're getting across.
Yeah, it was
interpreted that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you is this natural, this voice, or is this a voice that you had you had a beautiful singing voice, but you kind of had to work on it because you want to go in that direction? Or is this just naturally your voice?
My voice is pretty distinct. I've heard from a few of my vocal teachers that it's pretty. So I had a good basis to start with. But as far as technique goes, for vocalists, that's something that differs from genre to genre. So I've been jazz trained for about 6 or 7 years now. I started in high school. That was really fun. But now I'm in college and I'm studying music. So what they do there is they make sure that you have all of your classical technique down, which feels the exact opposite of jazz. So while my voice is still naturally pretty, the technique differs greatly from jazz to classical. So I feel like a beginner in some realms and pretty comfortable in others. So I would say jazz is kind of like my comfort spot and what I would prefer to do, honestly. And I'm really lucky that I have a background in that and that there's a scene here in San Diego for jazz, because I feel like sometimes it's hit or miss depending on where you go.
Now you're so young. So are your parents students of that era, or is this something that you've studied in school? Because if I grab an average 20-year-old girl and I say Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Sinatra, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller, they're gonna have no fucking clue. And to be honest with you, even my generation is gonna have no clue, right? My mother she's still alive. She's 87 years old. This is the music my mother would listen to. And my father would listen to, and they would play it in the house. Cause we're originally from Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously my family's from Italy, but we're originally from Brooklyn. And my parents, they actually had me late. Right. So they didn't have me until I'm 46. They didn't have me until 1976. So I have two older brothers that are much older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So even my generation wouldn't know, but my father would always play Sinatra. My mother always loved Judy Garland. There's another great voice. That's and Ella Fitzgerald, like I said, Billie Holiday, and I got to know who these voices were from my parents. I would hear them in movies, and back in my day, I would go to the store and buy the disc, the CD, right? And it was like they probably still have retro shit like that, the CD of whatever great musician, and I would listen to it myself, But it was amazing. So you have an Italian background too, right?
I do, yes. So I'm French, Italian, Swedish, Viking, Portuguese. I guess like some Native American, some like I'm all mixed different things. I think the Italian gene is pretty strong though. I didn't know how Italian I was until a few years ago when I met my mom's father, so I guess my grandpa, but it was for the first time ever a few years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
classic Italian nose, thick hair,
Yeah. Believe me.
loud hand motions,
Yeah. Believe me,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. So
So
it was really fun. I have half the family super, super Italian, so I like that.
okay, good. Yeah. So then we have a lot in common then, actually. But then you're presently in school.
Yeah, so
Okay.
right now I'm going to Grossmont College and I'm hoping to
Mhm.
get my AA. So I have 2 more semesters left. So 1 more full year and then I'll have an AA. And then I hope to transfer to San Diego State, where hopefully I'll get into their music business and entrepreneurship program. I didn't really want to go the performance route just because I figured since it was all connections, I would rather spend more outside time
Mhm.
gaining connections, and I figured the music field has so many people anyway. You're kind of bound to make those connections, if
Right.
you try hard enough. What was more important to me was being able to read a contract if I'm ever handed one, knowing the loopholes that some people might add into something like that, and just making sure I don't have like a Britney moment or any
Oh God.
copyright issues or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have to hire extra people. I could manage some things at least on my own.
Yeah, that is a world I could never know. I mean, it seems to be like cutthroat. I have no idea the music business. I mean, I just hear these crazy stories with like the hip hop artists and rock bands and all this crap, but who knows? But you have how many bands and when you're with these bands, do you travel to different circuits, different venues? How does it work?
Yeah, so each project that I work on is different than the last. And I end up at different venues, and every set list is different, and every song choice on there is different from the last. So the one I promote probably the most is my own personal image, where I tend to do more of the jazz tunes and stuff like that. So the last gig I played was one on Christmas Day at a hotel. It was a 2-hour gig. It was
Okay.
just me and whoever I could call in. So that day it was my friend who's a guitar player. We played jazz standards the whole time. Maybe took maybe about a 5-10 minute break, but the rest all jazz standards. And
Mhm.
I just call that Josie and Friends because if you call me, I'll just see whoever's around, and then
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
me
yeah.
and my friends.
Yeah.
So, my other 2 bands are completely different. So one I call the dad band because It's me, my boyfriend, his dad, and then their family friends. So it's two 20-year-olds, two like 60, like 50-year-olds, and then we're all playing classic rock and
Oh, very nice.
oh yeah, and then the people in the crowd are dads, but the
Well,
gig
that's yeah.
the set list is good. The gig is decent. People are really into it. They know the songs, so that's
Mhm.
a little more fun too because sometimes with jazz, since it's such a specific niche, some people might be really into it, and other times you really are just background noise and nothing more than
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So every once in a while, it's fun to play with Generation Gap because everyone gets super into it.
Mhm.
And then I have one more band that is called Rosebud, and it's more like a really fun project that kind of expresses an alter ego of mine. So it's kind of
Okay.
like alternative rock genre. I don't know. They're all original songs, and it's not anything like I've ever released. So I'm hoping to put out that stuff in 2023, hopefully
Mhm.
pretty soon here. We recorded two songs in the studio, and everyone's doing pretty good. It's just slow moving when you're starting with nothing. So we
Okay.
don't do any covers, so just have to go as far as we can write. Our set list is 20 minutes, and we're stoked to play anywhere. But we did get a gig at a bar called Winston's in Ocean
Mhm.
Beach, which is kind of a big deal locally because a lot of good artists start there. So we were stoked, and not all of us are 21, so we're not even technically allowed in the venues.
Yeah.
We stood outside in the cold at like 10:30 p.m. waiting for our set to roll around. But
Yeah.
it was really fun. I would do it again. So it's just different experiences that I pull from all these bands, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now, are you the lead singer in all three bands, or you also do use or a musician?
I know I'm the lead singer in all of them.
All
So
three bands.
I just say I'm a vocalist. I did play saxophone in high school, so every once in a while I get a friend that's like, break out the baritone saxophone and like play
Yeah.
solo. But they cost as much as a car, and I don't have one of those just laying around. So uh
Yeah. I mean, what's fantastic is when I love American pop culture. So music and the memories that music brings back, and so on and so forth. And your generation, there isn't much American pop culture. Everything is, social media and so on and so forth. So when I see a young person like you, it gives me hope, right? It really does. It's just, but it's just fascinating that somebody so young is so well versed in that world, because that was a great time.
yeah,
You
I agree.
know, I mean, it was a great time. We're talking about, the late 40s into the early 50s. It was post World War II, and everything was kind of like on the up and up.
Yeah.
And you had these great bands, and every band had a great lead singer. Sinatra was probably the number one, and he was the Tommy Dorsey band. You know, and it was just it's just tremendous. Now, do you? How can I say this? Music today, right? Let's talk about music today. Music today is very, very watered down, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Okay. In my opinion, music today is extremely watered down. So, what I mean by that is it's very corporate.
Yeah.
So, if you don't sound the same, if you don't, if you're a hip hop artist, if you're not saying what they want you to say, um, then there's no, they're not rolling the dice on any new ideas, right? And it goes like that. Basically, you have two choices. You have hip hop and you have pop. Okay, and I think this generation is the first generation where rock is not mainstream. Rock and roll has been around since the 50s. I mean, and even my generation, rock and roll, grunge, so on and so forth. That it was huge. I mean, huge. And then kind of after that took a nosedive. And I think that's why all the kids your age are going toward country music.
Hmm.
If because it at least it's got some depth, because rock and roll would basically sing to and teach to the youth, and it would and even the old hip hop would be almost like singing about the struggle. It would have a message,
Yeah.
right? And Now you don't have that, but at least country music has a message and is a little deep, and they sing about something, and there's instruments and there's a band and you can go see them and so on and so forth. So I think it kind of took the place of it. I don't know. Did you see the movie with Star is Born, Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper? I don't know if you know, but that movie was remade. I believe that was the 4th remake. Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. The third remake was Barbra Streisand. Mm-hmm. And the one before that was Judy Garland, and there was one before that, right? Oh, wow. So Judy Garland, I apologize, Barbra Streisand did it with Chris Christopherson, but it was in the 70s and it was rock based. Chris Christopherson was a rock and roll singer. So what I'm trying to say is that they made the movie for today in 2018, right? But they made it country because rock is kind of.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, the rock was not that, and that was done. I mean, that was completely on purpose. Rock is not the flagship.
Yeah, I don't think
music genre anymore. And then so what I'm saying is everything moved toward that because music basically has no meaning, and country music is the only thing with kind of meaning anymore. Does that bother you? Does that bother you that today's mainstream music is just so empty?
I think what has become a struggle in recent years is more the saturation of the field, just due to technology. So it's a great thing because anyone can do what you're doing, but it's also really hard and terrible because everyone can do what you're doing. So whether you worked years and perfected this skill your entire life to sound a certain way, someone could come out with an album that they created in their bedroom, and never mastered, but posted on TikTok for 80 days straight and now on the radio, so it can be a little frustrating to not be able to keep up with that kind of rapid paced change, especially when you're doing something that isn't super well known and you don't really want to change the song too much. There was another remake of a tune, Put Your Head on My Shoulder.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the original version, I believe, is by Paul Anka. Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Paul Anka. Yeah.
Yeah. A girl covered it. She had a good voice. It was just suddenly it was everywhere, and no knew that Paul had done it before, and everybody thinks that all the old stuff, if you change it up, has never been done before. So that can be kind of frustrating, just that lack of knowledge on the history of things, because I like to keep that in mind when I'm doing something like that, and I try to honor the culture since that was what I was taught when I was learning how to do this, so, you can't play a jazz standard without reading the lyrics first and then trying to connect with them and then finding what that means for you and thinking about the time frame that this song was created and like why they may have written that. And granted, a lot of jazz songs are either blues, sad songs, or they're like love songs typically. You can kind of talk it up to one of those two, but I like to keep in mind like the time frame and the artist that originally did it and at what point in their lives they were at when they sang that song. And I think it makes a big difference because if you're 60 singing about love, you're going to have a completely different look on things than, if you're 15 and you think you're in love, but
100%. Absolutely.
That's a different energy. So what bothers me a little bit more is just the fact that people just don't know because they're, thrown in their face is this one version of a song.
Yeah. Well, I'm very lucky that I had a family or parents that were interested in music. Now, none of us could sing or play an instrument or anything like that. But music was, tremendous. My like I said, my parents, it was big band, and then it got into Latin. Believe it or not, it got into a lot of Latin music, salsa, merengue, things like that, right? And then back in that, now you're talking about the early 50s when my father had a social club. Now everybody thinks that social clubs are only for like gangsters and stuff like that. Back in the early 50s, everybody had a social club, and they would just have parties, and the guys from the neighborhood would rent out a spot. Everybody would pay, chip in to pay, and then they would have parties and they would have bands there. and then they would have either the big band or they would have like the Latin music, and they would dance and so on and so forth and blah blah blah. So way before DJs. So I'm very lucky where my parents would play the music and tell me, oh, this is so and so, this is so and so, and it would be so commonplace for me, right?
Yeah.
It would be so commonplace for me, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's this," and then, I'll speak to guys my age or girls my age, and they have no idea, and I'm like, "Really?" Like, how do you? Like, it's like, my response is my response is always, you pick up things along the way of life, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I remember I was we were watching the Elvis Presley movie that just came out, right? And we're watching with my wife. My wife doesn't come from the same background. My wife is Greek and doesn't have the same background. So there's a scene where Elvis Presley's talking to Fats Domino. Fats Domino was a great pianist, great piano player, but rock and roll. And his most famous song was oh God, it was I Found My Thrill on Cherry Hill, right?
Mhm.
I can't sing, so right. And I'm like this, and I'm like, and I said, oh, that's Fats Domino. My wife has no clue, and to me, it just comes like that, right? Because my father telling me this, and then like I'll play a YouTube video. I'm like, oh, here, look, this is Fats Domino. This is Chuck Berry. This is Jerry Lee Lewis, because we were watching that movie, and what's funny is that she is interested, but she tries to pretend like she's not, because nobody could like, no wife could tell their husband that, oh, that's interesting. Like, no, you know what I mean?
We're doing our best, okay?
Yeah. But so I go online and I find you doing a version of How High the Moon, but it wasn't. See, this is one thing I didn't know. I didn't know that Pat Suzuki, it was actually a remake and did her own version, which is a very slow, romantic kind of version. And that came out in the early 60s. I had no idea. But you were doing the version of, and I don't even remember who did the original, which was more of a faster pace.
I was inspired by Ella Fitzgerald.
Okay. All right. She did do that. Yes, you're right. But what was funny was when you were singing, you were just making up your own words.
Yeah. So Ella actually did that in her version. So I took what she did and then tried to kind of mimic. I didn't want to make it, exact, but try, try to be like your idols. So
yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And I love her stuff so much. I've memorized about 3 of her scat solos so far from 3 different tunes. So, and they're all long. They're like 2-3 minutes long of just scat solos, but I like it, So,
yeah.
So I end up doing that, and then your sound is pretty much composed of whatever you've previously listened to. So say I only listened to like AC/DC and Metallica, I would not have this like soft, floaty, airy tone. It would be a lot of probably an underdeveloped, I don't know, raspy.
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of that like hard edge to it. And that's always frustrating too when you're working with musicians. It tends to be usually guitar players, because one hit of a pedal and their entire tone is different, and they're trying to like, oh, can you try and be a little bit rougher on this part? And you're like, no.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not an instrument.
I don't like that. Like, these are muscles inside, so I can't hit a button and it just sounds different. But I would love to. I would love to try, I'd always say like, well, we could try it, but just be prepared.
Right. So did you listen to the version of Pat Suzuki, that very slow romantic version? Do you like it?
Yeah, I think the first few lines, it sounded very pretty. And then,
it's probably the most popular version of that song.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely the most popular version of that song. I think somebody might have said it in one of your comments in that video where you were singing it. Did you ever get a chance to sing it like that, or you always sing it like Ella Fitzgerald?
Most times when I call somebody, I just send whatever recordings I've based the standard off of. So I end up telling them Ella Fitzgerald, because ballads are actually not one of my strong suits. I enjoy doing them, but if something's fast paced and I can bounce right through it, I have a lot of fun doing that. And that's not to say that ballads aren't fun. It's just like typically prefer to do a faster set. So
Ah,
more often than not, a lot of the songs are like mid-tempo or up-tempo, it's like swings or shuffles, and then like a slow song seems a little more like, ooh, the room's really quiet, you know? You
ah, yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
a little
Okay.
more uncomfortable, but I would love to record that in a studio, see what I could kind of mess around with in there because it's a beautiful tune. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really is. Do you have anything? What is it? Is it too much to put you on the spot to actually have you sing a little bit now? I mean, you could pick whatever you'd like. I don't really care.
I could try that version if you'd like. I know you wanted to hear that one.
Oh, I love that one. That's my favorite. But whatever's easiest for you. That's my absolute favorite.
You want me to play it in the background and we'll see how the audio sounds, or
That's great. That would be fantastic. Are you kidding? Absolutely.
let's see. Let's see what happens.
Okay. All right. A
It's
beautiful song.
Is it coming out okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune.
Oh,
Somewhere there's heaven, how high the moon. There is no moon above when love is far away too. Till it comes true that you love me as I love you. Somewhere there's music. It's where you are. Somewhere there's heaven. How near, how far. The darkest night would shine if you would come to me soon. Until you will, how still my heart, how high the moon.
oh, fantastic.
It's just so fun.
I mean, that is just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
When you hear a song like that, if it doesn't move you emotionally, you just must be dead. You really just must. There are just songs that as soon as you hear it, and that's one of them, you're like, oh my God, you know. And I really, really wish music would be appreciated like that as it was back in the day, because it's just not anymore. It's so sad. But when I hear somebody like you sing that, I mean, it's so absolutely beautiful. That's a voice you could fall in love with.
Thank you so much.
Eh,
I'd like to think that the older tunes are just prioritized a little different. I don't know, maybe that's just me living in a fantasy world, but I like to think that maybe it's not all lost, you know?
well,
Maybe
you,
I'll come back a little bit if they can just hear, the emotion in something, or if the backgrounds are different, and I could redo it in a studio and kind of just revamp this whole era. But I don't know.
once in a while you get it. Once in a while it happens. And but usually it's when Beyonce did that song, oh God, she did a remake of,
And Etta James too.
oh God, yes, Etta James. And that, I mean, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was
And
really
people loved it. And I, really wish that, it would be more appreciated. But unfortunately, I think corporate dollars, you know, rule, unfortunately, but there's still hope. There's talent like yourself, and you're very young and ambitious, and I truly hope that that we could get that done. I really, really hope you'll go far.
Thank you so much.
There's one thing that I want you to do, if you can do it, right? If only if you can do it. I'd like you to say, I'd like you to see if you could sing it a little bit. Serious and silliness, make sure to like and subscribe.
Sing it a little bit.
If you can.
Seriousness and silliness.
That's just serious and silliness.
Serious and silliness in like a swing tune, or
if you can, however you'd like.
Serious and silliness, like and subscribe. Serious and silliness, like and subscribe.
That was fantastic. That was great. Oh man, that is fantastic. You're definitely coming back. There's no question about that.
Much. That was fun.
Oh, you're very, very, very welcome. All right. Thank you, Josie. I really appreciate everything. Hang on. I don't want you to I don't want you to go anywhere yet. I'm just going to stop the recording, but greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.